The next machine that we're going to cover is the miter saw. There are a couple of different scenarios as to when you will use the miter saw. Some of you may end up using the miter saw before you plane your board. Okay? In that case, you are doing what is called a rough cut, and you want to make sure that you leave yourself a little bit of extra leeway when you're cutting your boards to length that way. So if I am making a nightstand and I know that my legs need to be 30 inches long, I'm going to cut them at minimum 31, maybe even 32 inches long. So I'm going to measure from one end, mark off at least an inch longer than what I want my finished product to be. So if I want it 30 inches, I'm going to mark 31. And then I'm going to line up that mark with the table saw, or I'm sorry, with the miter saw. Like so. Once I have it lined up right, you want to make sure that you are pushing down onto the table and back against the fence. At that point, you're ready to pull the trigger to turn the saw on. You want to wait for the saw to get up to full speed and then slowly cut through the board. Let the saw come to a complete stop before you lift the blade back up. And now this board is ready to take to the planer. The second scenario for when you're going to be using the miter saw is after you have already planed both of the faces and they are smooth. You've joined one edge and you've run the second edge through the table saw. So right now you have 4 surfaces that are flat, smooth, and 90 degrees to each other. Your last step to squaring up this board is going to be to square up one of the ends on the miter saw, measure the length, and cut the second end square. So to start with, you're going to come over to the miter saw, make sure that it is set to a 90-degree cut, and you're going to line it up to just take about a blade thickness off. Make sure that when you're making a cut, that you push the board down tight to the table and back tight against the fence. When you're ready to make your cut, after you've lined it up, make sure that you have the saw blade up away from the board before you pull the trigger. Pull the trigger, make sure that it comes up to full speed, and then slowly cut through your board. Make sure the saw comes to a complete stop before you lift it back up. Now you have one end squared. At this point, that is the end that you're going to be taking your measurement from. This board has already been squared up on this end. I'm going to take my measurement from that end, and I want this board to be cut at 24 inches. So again, measuring from the end that I've just squared up, put a pencil mark at 24 inches. And that pencil mark is what you're going to line up with the blade of the saw. It's best to err on the side of caution. You can always take a little bit more later, but if you cut it too short, you're starting over from scratch. You can see that I left a little bit beyond the line there. Like I said, it's best to leave a little bit of extra rather than end up taking too much too early. The last thing I'm going to show you on the miter saw is how to cut an angle. Your most common angle that you're going to be cutting is a 45-degree angle. In order to change the angle on the miter saw, first this handle needs to be up level, and then you push down on this button with your thumb, and you can move left or right. And like I said, your most common angle is going to be 45 degrees, which is right here. The saw should lock into your common angles like 45, 30, 22 and a half. When you have it where you want it, lock the handle down. You're going to line your cut up the same way as whenever you're making a 90-degree cut. Make sure that you take extra care when cutting an angle. You want to make sure that you go even slower than normal in order to get a nice cut without a whole lot of splinters.